Okay, learning from work. A big element of that is reading. Here are genuinely the last 11 books that I've bought that I am either reading, have recently read, or are about to. It kind of gives away the interests I have at this time, which is fine. So reading. Does it mean books? To me, it doesn't, as much as it means reading articles. I'm a CIPD fellow, jolly good one. I've been for 30 odd years, and I've got access to an electronic library like a lot of people have in professional bodies. And I make use of it, like a lot of people don't do who are members of professional bodies. Doesn't make me better or different. Well, it makes me different to many, but it certainly doesn't make me better necessarily. So what we're trying to say here, that where we have access to, for instance, an electronic library stuff, use it. But you don't have to. You go there and buy books. Now, the key thing about reading as an element of learning from work is not to just read and forget. The absolutely fundamental issue for me is to overcome read and forget syndrome. Look at all the wisdom in these books. There's 11 of them there. They're fantastic. I carefully choose the books I read because I haven't got a lot of money to spend on books, so I'm careful. On top of which, I'm very clear about where my interests lie. So I don't buy a book in the hope that it's got something useful for me. I base it upon my current interests and what I firmly believe is going to be a source of additional learning. So if you read a book, it's going to take you a lot of hours to do it properly. No skimming. Any of those books are going to take, I don't know what we're talking about, 20, 30, 40 upwards of that hours. That's a whole working week for a lot of people, half of one for me. The element here of interest for me is, yes, read. And then 3 weeks later, what do you remember? So it's critically important that for me, you don't just read, but you note your learning in whatever detail is appropriate, just a few words or a lot of words, in order to keep and to get value from that reading. So where do I go next? Look at this, something of interest. The 5-hour rule. The 5-hour reading rule is this. Apparently it came in with President Jefferson thing all those time ago, years ago in America. But anyway, a lot of people genuinely believe that, irrespective of how important they are. If you got here, Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, however important you are, to find time to read. Not just work-based reading, but wider reading, to broaden your horizons, to explore issues that you wouldn't otherwise do. We can too easily get into the habit of not reading. We can too easily convince ourselves that we're too busy to read. Well, that may be the case. I'm not going to argue with anyone who thinks they are. I'll simply say I'll follow you around for a whole week and point out where those 5 hours are, because they are there. We always find time for what we believe is important, and we push back down the list of urgency those things we don't feel are worth finding time for. And I think reading falls into that. So here are just 3 examples. There's many others. Put the 5-hour rule into Google and you'll find plenty more about this, that genuinely people who are at the top of their game, irrespective of being as busy as they are, much more so than just about anybody else that's going to be around that listens to this, they find time to read, not just to read, but to truly digest, to truly learn from this. So the 5-hour rule, round about an hour a day. It's not easy to find. It's got to find it at the expense of other things, perhaps, but it's worth doing. Now, when I read something, and I read a lot of articles, so I'll be very deliberate about what I'm looking for, and I'll pull in a lot of what turns out to be high quality, good stuff that tells me really powerful learning. When I read either a book, and this is a summary I've written of Getting Past No, which is the best book in my view on negotiation, I will go to the trouble of handwriting my notes directly from that book. I don't find it in me to write on books. My mother told me ages ago that that's a bad thing to do, and I've stuck to it. I might put little nail marks in the side of something, but more likely I'll just make a few notes directly from what I'm reading, and I'll handwrite those. And then I'll go back over my handwritten notes, further reinforcing that, and I'll do this. And a book of, I'll have a look. Yeah, a book of, in the case of getting past, no, I'm looking through it now, of 165 or so pages. Not a huge book, but very, very good. I will produce 6 or 7 pages of this. And this is a permanent record. This means that the hours I spend reading the book and the additional hours that I spend doing this are made worthwhile. Why do this? Well, if you don't do it, you wasted your hours reading the book. You tell me if you could remember what's in the book to this degree that I have in front of me and can refer to and share with others. I feel it's worth doing. So this is the process that I go through, not just with books I read, but particularly with articles. Because with articles, I can hone in on a very specific issue that I'm most interested in. In a book, there might be big chunks, hopefully, of the book that are of relevance, but not all of it. When I pull in an article from someone I know the work of, about an issue that I'm interested in, it's more likely that that focused, condensed, intense, worthwhile reading is going to come from that article more than a book that will take many hours more. So I will, for instance, read quite a lot on coaching, servant leadership, team working, all manner of things, mentoring, emotional intelligence, that sort of stuff. So I will focus on a topic and I will pull in a large number of high quality, as judged by the likelihood of that being the case due to the author or the source, whatever, articles. And I'll read 20 or so, maybe 25, and a mean read, and I'll note it, and I'll type up my notes. And when I get 20,000 words, 20,000 words is around about 40 or 50 of these pages, I'll move on to something else. But it gives me a permanent record that I can refer back to, that I can use, and the hours I spend doing this are worthwhile. So the process that I go through, whether I'm reading books or articles, is that I will, in a notebook, keep a handwritten summary of the things that most grab me with a page reference. I'll then type that up into a typed up resource, and it gives me a permanent record, like I say, that makes all the hours worthwhile, because I haven't just suffered from read and forget syndrome. Make sure you make the hours spent on reading, hopefully at least 5 hours a week, worthwhile by the record you keep of the learning that was gained.